Have you ever felt like your Stratocaster sounded thin or shrill on the bridge pickup? Or is your rig set up for a Les Paul or humbucker guitar and something just seems off if you try to use your Strat? Or maybe you don't even think you like the Fender Stratocaster, but maybe you would if you knew the trick that I'm about to show you. Someone commented on my custom shop versus Squire shootout video asking about this, so let me just explain the whole thing. I've been doing this for years, but I've since heard it being talked about by guys like Nigel Hendroff or Phil McKnight as a way to bridge the gap between guitars for their rig. But I originally got the idea from John Nathan Cordy. So let me not only show you the trick, but give you parameters that you can use with a Stratocaster with any multi-effects unit EQ block or a simple EQ pedal. So I solved the problem with a single EQ block at the beginning of the signal chain. It would be best to think of this EQ block as a part of the guitar rather than a part of the rest of the rig. In fact, Nigel Hendroff's implementation of this is a separate EQ pedal he has on stage, separate from his whole rig. He's got this crazy MIDI thing. Everything is in the back in the rack, but that one EQ pedal is on the floor that his guitar plugs into that before anything else. And he said it was so that if he switches guitars, he could fix it so it would sound right. But my implementation of this actually starts with John Nathan Cordy sharing a trick he does with his Strats. Now, he's a Strat guy. He always plays Strats. And when he always plays Strats, he always plays them with a low shelf. So a low shelf is going to raise or lower everything below a certain frequency. In this case, I have mine set up for 2000 kilohertz. And it's giving a 3 decibel bump to everything below that. It's not going to be a hard cut, though. It's going to be a gradient. So if you could see a visualization of this EQ, it would look like a curve to the 3 decibel. Let's try it without the EQ. This is clean. Now let's try it with the EQ, with that shelf. Let's try something on the crunch snapshot. I'm going to be in the middle position. And now with our shelf EQ. And now the lead sound on the bridge pickup without the EQ. And with the shelf EQ. I think that's usable. It's just fine. I guess at some point, though, I wanted it to be better. And that's why I pushed forward to kind of see what the next step would be. I actually got the idea for the next step from a different John Nathan Cordy video. This is one where he was using a Les Paul and he made a video about how to make a Les Paul sound like a Strat. Basically, he just scooped it. He just found a frequency in a parametric EQ or something like that. I used that as the germ of an idea to do the opposite of that, to make a Strat sound thicker. I don't know why anyone would want to make a Les Paul sound thin, but I'm very interested in making a Stratocaster sound thicker. And when I got to this part of the journey, I got real nerdy. So I ended up with 6 different EQs that I might use for a Stratocaster. Here's the shelf. I don't use that a whole lot anymore, but it was the first one. And I really just copied John Nathan Cordy, and I probably changed this parameter here, the low frequency. I don't remember what his was. After a lot of A/B testing, I ended up with this EQ. This is my bread and butter. This is the one. Strat Dark is its name in, I don't know why I called it that. Parametric EQ, basically there's 5 spikes in signal to thicken up the Stratocaster. Each of these little spikes have the same Q. The Q is how wide the spike is. So a very high Q would be just literally just that frequency, and a low Q would really spread it out to make that hump gradual if you were visualizing the EQ. They're also all the same magnitude. It's 3 decibels on each one, and there's a high cut in there, or a low pass if you prefer, at 8.2 kilohertz. And then the 3 humps are at 125 hertz, 500 hertz, and 1500 hertz or 1.5 kilohertz. So basically it's adding lots of lows. It's adding some low mids, like, tube screamer territory. And it's adding some high mids, which is like some clon territory. And that's all there is to it. But it took me a lot of trial and error to really decide that that was my favorite thing. So here's just the Strat again. Clean on the neck pickup. Let's hear that with Strat Dark. All right, let's hear something crunchy on the middle pickup with the Stratocaster. And let's see how my Strat Dark EQ thickens that up. Let's hear some lead octaves on the bridge pickup without the EQ. And thickening it up with my Strat Dark. It's more subtle than I remember, or maybe the difference is not as wide with the Silver Sky as with my normal Stratocaster. One of my 6 EQs actually is special for the Silver Sky. Let's see what I did there. So the Silver Sky EQ looks like it's only the mids bump. I'm not doing anything with lows or highs. The mids are dimed out to 12 decibels at 600 hertz. I don't remember exactly. I think that is the mirror image of John Cordy's Les Paul Scooper EQ. I think he was taking a Les Paul and dropping 12 decibels from 600 hertz to make it sound closer to his Strat. And that's probably my starting point for this, trying this. So let's see what this one sounds like. First without the EQ. Neck pickup, clean. With the EQ. Wow, I like that a lot. Something crunchy on the middle pickup. No EQ. With the EQ. Lead octaves without the EQ. Lead octaves with the EQ. I like this one better than my Strat Dark for the Silver Sky. I wonder why the Silver Sky would require so much more of those regular lowish mids. I wonder if it's the maple fretboard. I noticed that I probably made a mistake by getting a Silver Sky with a maple fretboard. There's a whole story about that. I think that's in my Guitar Center series, talking about what I learned about maple versus rosewood fretboards, and also the difference between a real Fender Stratocaster maple and other brands that just don't put that finish on the maple. It changes. It's not the same. I ended up really regretting not getting rosewood because it's just so clean and sparkly and scooped, and I wanted something kind of midsy and gritty and smooth. My other Stratocaster is rosewood, and that's also why I chose Fender Custom Shop Fat 60s pickups for it. I did a video on that. That was the video that got the comment that got me even talking about this. Here's another option that I kept, and it's worth having in the toolbox. This is Strat Dark Boost. It says booze, but it's really supposed to be boost. The reason that there would be a boost is because even with these EQ adjustments to make the Strat thicker, sometimes on some presets with some songs, with some day of the week, it still sounds like it's just not enough. And so adding a boost, it's just giving 9 decibels down here to the level overall. I have found when in doubt, if my Strat doesn't seem like enough, I can just kick on the crunch and it will be like the Les Paul without the crunch, or I just use a boosted EQ if I'm gonna have an EQ block anyway. Crunch setting on the middle pickup. And with the Strat Dark Boost EQ, Lead octaves on the bridge pickup. With the EQ. So we talked about Strat Dark and Strat Dark Boost. This is Strat Bright. On Strat Bright, we're going only 1.5 decibels at 262 hertz instead of 125 hertz. For the middle one, we're still at 500, but we're only at 2.5 decibels instead of 3. And then for the high, we're still at 1500 hertz, and we're only at 2.5 decibels. But we're boosting the 3 humps less. The overall is going to get an extra decibel just to make it up. The high cut is still at 8.2 kilohertz. So let's hear neck pickup clean without the EQ. And with the EQ. All right. And crunchy on the middle pickup without the EQ. With the EQ. Lead octaves on the bridge pickup without the EQ. With the EQ. The last EQ I have, I named it Strat Les Paul Bridge. I don't think I ever even used this. I made this. I was on a quest. It was driving me crazy. I hated how there just was nothing on my Stratocaster that would sound like the bridge pickup of my Les Paul. I just wanted my Stratocaster to have a bridge pickup of a Les Paul. I didn't want to actually have a bridge pickup on my Stratocaster. I just wanted to be able to flip a switch and it sound like I did. And this EQ was the closest I could get to doing that. So for lows, we're at 495 hertz. That's as high as it could go, cranking that 9 decibels. And then for the mids, we're still at 1.5 kilohertz, cranking that 9 decibels. And then the highs are attenuated at 2.6 kilohertz, but that's a really high Q. So that's going to be a much more focused attenuation. The high cut is still there, but it's way up at 15 kilohertz. So it's not doing much, but the level is boosted 4.5 decibels on top of all that. There's no reason to test this on anything but the bridge pickup because this was designed to make the bridge pickup what I wanted it to be. Without the EQ. And with the EQ. Oh yeah, I like that. I'm glad we talked about this because I forgot all about this patch. Even without the distortion block. That's without the EQ. Without the EQ. Yeah, I like it better with the EQ. So even though I have 6 of these blocks in Helix land, I only ever use the Strat Dark, almost always. I would only ever go to one of the other ones if for some reason Strat Dark just wasn't working. Something wasn't right, something wasn't fitting, or if I was with a different guitar entirely. But since I use a Kemper now, let me show you how I implemented this on the Kemper. Right here, Studio Equalizer, and you see that little lock emblem? It stays on the first block on every single patch, no matter what rig or performance or slot I go to, that stays the same. In fact, I'll even show you on the rig because I love this so much. So just imagine that I have these going. If that's off, if I hold the lock, it'll tell me what's locked. You see how that A button lit up? That's telling me that that's locked in place. And no matter where I go, my Studio Equalizer will be there waiting for me. And if I have it on and go to the next rig, it'll stay there. Stay there. It will not turn off. And if I turn it off, it will stay there. stay off. So I don't have to think about it for if I'm gonna use my Strat that day, I don't have to sit and reprogram every single slot of every single performance. I just lock that baby in there and I don't have to think about it again until I put my Strat down. Going back to a normal preset for me on the HX Stomp, there's something similar to the lock feature. If I come to the EQ block and if I toggle Snapshot bypass, see there's no check mark? With the check mark, if I go from one snapshot to the other, it will remember if that block was on or off when I saved the preset. But if I uncheck it, now if I go to crunch, it stays on. If I go to lead, it stays on. So if I turn this off, because I have my Les Paul and I turned snapshot bypass on by mistake, and I go to crunch, oh no, it was on last time, so it just turns on. On all these EQ blocks that are really more about the guitar than about the rest of the rig, leave snapshot bypass off because I'm not really changing guitars without knowing it to be able to hit that button. I wish I had the unit here to show you this as well. I even set up on my HX Stomp a foot switch that I can page over and foot switch on or off that EQ block in case I was switching guitars in the middle of a set. I don't use the stomp mode, so those foot switches I save for little things like that. If I want to toggle an effects loop because I'm using the rig differently, if I want to toggle one of these EQ blocks. But back to the Kemper, let's see what settings I ended up with on the Kemper. So when I did this, I would have used my Strat Dark as a starting point. In fact, I think this, yes, this is named Strat Dark. No low cut, low frequency is 125 Hertz. I'm giving it 2 decibels instead of 3. But I'm bumping 500 Hertz, 2.5 decibels. I'm not bumping any other mids. Yeah, so it's really just 2. I have the low and I have mid 1, and there is no high gain, there is no mid gain. I don't have a high cut on. I'm given a +1 on volume. That's not measured in decibels. So I guess I just seasoned that to taste. So here's a look at that EQ block on the unit. Low gain 2 decibels, low frequency 125 Hertz. Not doing anything with the high. Mid gain 1 is 2.5 decibels, frequency of 500 Hertz. Not doing anything with mid gain 2, not doing anything with low cut or high cut, but I'm giving it +1 volume. Another thing you could do different on the Kemper, that was a studio EQ. You could use what they call a graphic EQ. Much simpler, just certain bands. My version of this would be, 3 decibels on 125 Hertz, 3 decibels on 500 Hertz, 3 decibels on 2000 Hertz. But if you don't have any of that fancy gear, let's just look at literally the cheapest EQ pedal that I could find on Amazon. This is 25 bucks. You could just take 100 Hertz, bump that 3 decibels. You could take 400, bump that 3 decibels, and you could take 1.6 and bump that 3 decibels and get exactly the same place I got. Or if the curves of these bands are different from 0.7 Q on a parametric, you just figure it out, just season it to taste. But it wouldn't be that different. You could definitely do it with this pedal, or you could do it with this pedal, or with this pedal, or with this pedal. You could definitely do it. So here you have 125 right there, 500. You don't have a 1500. They're slicing it up so thin. I might bump up 3 decibels on 125 and then bump up 1 on 250 and 62.5, 3 on 500, and then bump up 1 decibel on 1K. That would definitely work. There's other ways you could solve this problem. I did the same thing with my Epiphone Casino. So that's a hollow body guitar with P90s. I ended up with this EQ right here, and I forget why or how, but it's not important. But when I did the Casino, I actually found I liked the results maybe a little better with a compressor. You see line 6 has a 3-band compressor in all their Helix products. You can see the parameters there. I forget what I was trying to accomplish with the P90s, but I mean, essentially I'm getting them to be closer to my humbuckers and my Les Paul. Phil McKnight uses a boost pedal for this. He says he always has to have a clean boost, and he talks about that being, if the guitar's a little hot, you can dial it back. If it's a little weak, you can boost it. I could also go all the way back to the drawing board on my tones and set every patch up that it would work with my darkest guitar with the lowest input. Everything on the tone and the gain settings on every step of the signal chain would be high enough. All the highs are there, and I can just roll it off with a tone knob on whatever guitar I have. And all this, all the gain is there, and I can just roll it off on the volume knob with whatever guitar I have. So basically set it for, I have more than enough no matter what guitar I have, and then just bring it down as needed with the controls on the guitar. That would be a good way to do it, but it would be way too much work for me to start from scratch now. You can also darken your tone with technique, like where on the guitar you pick, how you hold your pick, what kind of pick you use, how you turn your pick. Let me know if you'd like a tutorial on that. Comment below if you'd like a video on how to darken or brighten your tone with picking dynamics and technique. Let me show you a great A/B testing workflow that you can use to dial in tones, and it will work with any multi-effects unit, or even if you just have a looper on your board, it will work. Now, this is a recreation of what I would do with an HX Stomp and an HX Effects. I'm actually cheating. This is Helix native, but we're gonna do it anyway because you'll get the gist.